Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing HFY stories. Hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest uploads. The trap. The metallic hum of the elevator felt like the only stable thing left in Jamie's world. The sleek, cylindrical capsule ascended smoothly at first, the transparent walls providing a breathtaking view of Proxima Prime's endless skyline. Jamie leaned against the railing, watching neon lights flicker across the distant horizon. "Can you believe we're even here?" Jamie asked, nudging Eli, who was engrossed in his holographic tablet. "No," Eli replied flatly, not looking up. "And I'd rather not think about how many ways I could embarrass humanity right now." Before Jamie could retort, the elevator jolted violently, throwing them off balance. The holographic panels on the walls flickered, and a cold, artificial voice announced, "System malfunction detected. Emergency protocol initiated." Jamie groaned, "Oh, come on. Can we not get stuck in a cliché today?" A sharp, melodic voice cut through their banter. "Cliché or not, it seems we are trapped." Jamie turned to face the source, Zaylee. The alien diplomat stood poised, her lavender-hued skin glowing faintly under the emergency lights. Her crystalline eyes, multifaceted and shimmering like a nebula, scanned the room with a mixture of irritation and calm detachment. She was otherworldly in every sense of the word, her translucent robes flowing like liquid starlight. Jamie blinked, momentarily stunned, before offering a sheepish grin. "Well, at least we're in good company." Zaylee raised a brow. At least, Jamie assumed it was a brow. Her expression was as unreadable as her species' mysterious reputation. Eli broke the silence, typing furiously on his device. "I'm trying to interface with the elevator's AI. Give me a second." "Take your time," Jamie said, leaning back. "It's not like we're on a deadline or anything." Zaylee's crystalline eyes narrowed. Sarcasm in the face of adversity. A quintessential human trait? Jamie smirked. "You say that like it's a bad thing?" As the minutes dragged on, the trio settled into an uneasy silence. The elevator's faint hum seemed louder now, an omnipresent reminder of their isolation. Finally, Eli sighed, shaking his head. "It's worse than I thought. The system isn't just malfunctioning, it's locked down entirely. Someone, or something, did this intentionally." Jamie's stomach dropped. "Intentionally? Like, sabotage?" Zaylee's expression darkened, her luminous skin dimming slightly. "If that is true, then our situation is far graver than we thought." The atmosphere grew heavier, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. Jamie glanced at Eli, who looked more determined than ever, and then at Zaylee, whose calm facade betrayed a hint of concern. "Well," Jamie said, forcing a grin. "Guess we'd better figure this out. No way I'm letting an elevator beat me. First contact, first impressions asterisk." The elevator's dim emergency lights pulsed faintly, illuminating the tense silence that followed Eli's grim revelation. Jamie glanced around the cramped space, acutely aware of how small it felt with the three of them trapped. "Well," Jamie said, breaking the silence, "we've got a genius hacker, an alien diplomat, and me. Shouldn't this be enough brain power to beat a stuck elevator?" Zaylee's crystalline gaze shifted to Jamie, her tone cool but pointed. "If this were merely a stuck elevator, I would agree. However, given Mr. Eli's observation, we must consider that this is more than mechanical failure." "Call me Eli," he muttered, his fingers flying across his device. "And yeah, this isn't just broken. The system's locked down tighter than anything I've seen before. Somebody really doesn't want this thing working." Jamie leaned against the railing, trying to process the gravity of their situation. "Okay, so if it's sabotage, who's the target? The elevator? The building? You?" Jamie asked, looking at Zaylee. The alien's expression tightened, her glowing skin shifting to a slightly cooler hue. "The Emperor often find themselves as targets of jealousy or fear within the galactic community. But such a crude attempt at harm does not align with the methods of those who oppose us." "Right," Jamie said, crossing their arms. "Because trying to kill someone with a faulty elevator is so last century." Zaylee tilted her head, studying Jamie as though trying to decide whether to be amused or annoyed. "Humor in the face of adversity. Is this your species' primary coping mechanism?" Jamie grinned. "Oh, absolutely. It's either laugh or cry, and I've got a strict no-tears policy." Eli snorted quietly, his focus still on his tablet. "You should see Jamie during tax season." "Shut up, Eli." The banter seemed to ease some of the tension, but the reality of their predicament loomed heavy. The air was growing colder, and a faint hissing noise began to seep into the background. "Do you hear that?" Jamie asked, standing upright. Zaylee's gaze sharpened. "Yes. A gas leak?" Eli cursed under his breath. Coolant maybe. If it's venting into the elevator, we're in serious trouble. Jamie's mind raced. Can you stop it? I can try, but this isn't just some elevator, Eli said, gesturing to the high-tech panels around them. It's part of the building's integrated AI system. And whoever sabotaged it made sure there are no easy back doors. Well, you'd better figure something out, Jamie said, stepping closer to Zaylee. And you, any fancy alien tricks up your sleeve? Zaylee's crystalline eyes narrowed. My species does not rely on tricks, as you put it. We have telepathic and sensory abilities far beyond your comprehension, but they are ill-suited for this mechanical problem. Great, Jamie muttered. So it's all on Eli. Eli shot them a glare. No pressure, huh? As Eli worked, Jamie turned to Zaylee, trying to distract themselves from the rising hiss of the gas. So, what's the deal with the Emperor? You guys are all over the news back home, mysterious, hyper-advanced, and way too good-looking for your own good. Are the rumors true? Zaylee raised an elegant brow. Rumors? You know, Jamie said, smirking, that your people are basically space elves who think they're too cool to hang out with the rest of the galaxy. For the first time, Zaylee's lips curved into something resembling a smile. A crude but not entirely inaccurate description. Jamie chuckled. I knew it. So what made you come to this shindig? Galactic politics isn't exactly Emperor territory, right? Zaylee hesitated, her expression unreadable. Let us say that my presence here is controversial among my people. We value isolation, yet I believe that cooperation with other species may become a necessity. Jamie tilted their head. So you're the rebel of the group? Rebel implies recklessness, Zaylee said, her tone sharp but not unkind. I prefer to think of myself as pragmatic. Right. Pragmatic, Jamie said with a grin. I'll remember that. Their conversation was cut short as Eli let out a triumphant noise. Got something? What is it? Jamie asked, rushing to his side. Eli pointed to his tablet. I managed to reroute the coolant flow, but it's only a temporary fix. We've got maybe 30 minutes before the system overloads and floods the whole elevator with gas. 30 minutes? That's it? Jamie said, their grin fading. Unless you've got a better idea, yeah, Eli snapped. Zaylee stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. We must act quickly. Is there a way to manually override the elevator's locks? Eli shook his head. Not from here. The override controls are in the main security hub, but we're cut off from it. Jamie ran a hand through their hair, trying to think. Okay, so we need to get a message out. Can we contact anyone outside the building? Eli frowned. Maybe. If I can boost the signal on my tablet, I might be able to send a distress call. But it'll take time. Then do it, Zaylee said, her voice commanding. In the meantime, we must find a way to slow the gas leak further. Jamie glanced at Zaylee. Any chance those fancy telepathic powers can help? Zaylee hesitated, then nodded. If I focus, I may be able to sense weaknesses in the system's structure. It could guide us to a solution. Great, Jamie said, clapping their hands. You do that, Eli sends the distress call and I'll, supervise. Zaylee gave them a bemused look. Supervise? Hey, I'm the idea person, Jamie said with a grin. You guys handle the technical stuff. As the trio got to work, the atmosphere in the elevator shifted. For the first time, they were no longer just three strangers trapped together, they were a team. Danger lurks in the dark. The faint hiss of coolant gas was becoming more pronounced. Jamie's joking demeanor faltered as they paced the confined space, trying to ignore the growing chill in the air. The dim emergency lights cast long shadows, making the sleek interior feel more like a claustrophobic metal tomb. Eli was seated on the floor, his tablet glowing faintly as he muttered to himself and worked furiously. Zaylee stood motionless near the wall, her eyes closed, her hands lightly touching the sleek panels as if she could commune with the elevator itself. Jamie stopped pacing and watched her. Is that working? Or are you just vibing with the walls? Without opening her eyes, Zaylee responded in her calm, melodic tone. If you would refrain from disrupting my focus, I might provide a solution before we suffocate. Jamie raised their hands defensively. Got it? Fewer jokes, more quiet panic? Eli snorted from his corner. You panicking? That'd be a first. Jamie shot him a glare. Hey, I panic very effectively when I need to. Zaylee opened her eyes, her crystalline gaze locking on Jamie. Your humor masks fear. A common human defense mechanism, though not without merit. However, it is a distraction. Jamie blinked, surprised. I wasn't, okay, maybe a little. But you're not exactly cracking jokes either. I do not need to, Zaylee said simply. My species is adept at controlling fear. It does not serve us to indulge it. Jamie looked at her skeptically. You've never been scared? Zaylee's gaze softened just slightly. Fear is not foreign to me. But it is contained. Before Jamie could respond, Eli let out a frustrated groan. This is impossible. I'm barely getting a signal and the system keeps shutting me out. Whoever did this, they're good. Like scary good? Better than you? Jamie asked, leaning over his shoulder. Don't rub it in, Eli muttered. I need more time to boost the signal. And even if I get through, I don't know if anyone will receive it in time. Jamie sighed and stepped back, rubbing their temples. Okay, so plan A isn't looking great. What about you, Zaylee? Any breakthroughs with your psychic, whatever? Zaylee straightened, her expression unreadable. I have identified structural weaknesses in the elevator's containment. There is a hatch above us leading to the maintenance shafts. If we can access it, we may be able to bypass the system and reach the building's control hub. Jamie perked up. Finally, some good news. How do we open it? Zaylee's lips pressed into a thin line. The hatch is locked by a mechanical override. I cannot manipulate it telepathically. Of course it is, Jamie muttered. Eli looked up from his tablet. I might be able to manually force it open, but it'll take tools we don't have. Jamie glanced around the elevator, their mind racing. Tools. Okay, what if we MacGyver something? We've got your tablet, my belt, and Jamie looked at Zaylee. Do you have anything we can use? Zaylee arched an elegant brow. Aside from myself? Jamie grinned. Right. Bad question. Eli sighed and set his tablet aside. I'll see what I can rig up. Jamie, help me look for anything useful. As they scavenged the elevator, Jamie glanced at Zaylee, who remained by the wall, her gaze distant. Hey, Jamie said, their voice softer. You okay? You've been awfully quiet for someone who's supposed to be a big-deal diplomat. Zaylee hesitated before responding. This situation is not one I am accustomed to. My people do not often face such unpredictability. Jamie chuckled. Welcome to the human experience. Chaos is kind of our thing. I have noticed, Zaylee said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Jamie was about to respond when Eli's voice cut through the moment. Got it? I think this might work. They turned to see Eli holding a makeshift tool, a thin, sharp piece of metal pried from the elevator's control panel and wrapped with a strip of Jamie's belt for grip. This should be strong enough to jimmy the hatch, Eli said, his confidence returning. Great, Jamie said. Let's get climbing. The trio moved into position beneath the hatch, with Jamie volunteering to go first. Eli handed them the tool, and Zaylee boosted Jamie onto her shoulders with surprising ease for someone who had claimed to be physically weaker. You're stronger than you look, Jamie said, gripping the edge of the hatch. Appearances can be deceiving, Zaylee replied evenly. Jamie worked the tool into the hatch's lock, gritting their teeth as they pried and twisted. The metal groaned in protest, but after a few tense moments, the lock gave way with a satisfying click. Got it? Jamie said, pushing the hatch open. They hoisted themselves into the maintenance shaft, then helped Eli and Zaylee climb up after them. The shaft was narrow and dimly lit, with cables and pipes running along the walls. Now what? Jamie asked, their voice echoing slightly. Zaylee closed her eyes briefly, her skin glowing faintly. The control hub is approximately 3 levels above us. We must climb carefully to avoid triggering any additional security measures. Eli groaned. Of course it's 3 levels. Why not 30? Let's just get moving, Jamie said, starting up the ladder. The climb was slow and tense, the trio moving in near silence except for the occasional creak of the ladder and the distant hiss of coolant from below. Jamie kept glancing down, half expecting the elevator to come crashing up at them or some other catastrophe to strike. Almost there, Zaylee said from below, her voice calm but strained. As they reached the next level, a faint hum filled the air, a low, ominous sound that sent a chill down Jamie's spine. What's that? Eli whispered, his voice tight with fear. Zaylee's expression darkened. We are not alone. A sudden metallic clang echoed through the shaft, followed by the sound of something skittering along the walls. Not alone? Jamie hissed. What do you mean, not alone? Zaylee's crystalline eyes glowed brighter. There is a presence. Mechanical. Hostile. Eli's face went pale. Great. Killer robots. This just keeps getting better. Jamie tightened their grip on the ladder, their heart pounding. All right, new plan, climb faster. The trio scrambled upward, the skittering noise growing louder with each passing second. Jamie's breath came in short gasps as they reached the next hatch. Hurry? Zaylee urged, her usually calm voice edged with urgency. Jamie didn't need to be told twice. They shoved the hatch open and clambered through, helping the others up just as a sleek, spider-like drone emerged from the shadows below. The drone's red sensor lights glowed menacingly as it climbed after them. Close the hatch, Eli shouted. Jamie slammed the hatch shut and twisted the manual lock, their hands shaking. That won't hold it for long, Zaylee said, her tone grim. Running out of time. The maintenance corridor was a tight, dimly lit tunnel, its walls lined with cables and control panels. Jamie led the way, their breath coming in quick, shallow gasps as adrenaline pushed them forward. Behind them, Eli clutched his tablet protectively while Zaylee moved with an eerie grace, her glowing skin casting faint light against the walls. The skittering sound of the drone pursuing them echoed like a nightmare. How far to the control hub? Jamie called back, not daring to look over their shoulder. Another 20 meters, Zaylee replied, her voice calm but clipped. The hatch ahead should lead us there. Jamie glanced down the corridor. The hatch was visible in the distance, but so was the faint red glow of the drone sensors reflecting off the walls behind them. It's gaining? Eli shouted, panic seeping into his voice. Just keep moving, Jamie barked, picking up their pace. They reached the hatch and Jamie wasted no time, wrenching it open with every ounce of strength they had. The mechanisms groaned in protest but finally gave way. Go. Go. Jamie urged, shoving Eli through first. Zaylee followed, her movements fluid and controlled despite the urgency. Jamie was halfway through the hatch when a sharp, metallic whine cut through the air. The drone was close. Too close. A red laser shot past Jamie's head, scorching the edge of the hatch. They flinched, their grip slipping slightly as the heat stung their skin. Jamie, move? Eli yelled, his voice desperate. Jamie scrambled through the hatch just as the drone lunged forward, its metallic legs clanging against the walls. Zaylee grabbed Jamie's arm and yanked them through, slamming the hatch shut behind them. The drone slammed into the other side with a deafening crash, the hatch buckling slightly under the impact. That won't hold it for long, Zaylee said, her tone steady but urgent. Yeah, no kidding, Jamie panted, wiping sweat from their brow. Eli was already on his feet, scanning the room. The control hub was a small, circular chamber filled with holographic displays and consoles. The air hummed with energy and a faint blue glow illuminated the space. This is it, Eli said, his eyes lighting up. If I can access the mainframe, I can override the entire system. Shut down the drones, open the elevator, everything. Then do it, Jamie said, glancing nervously at the hatch as another crash reverberated through it. Eli rushed to the nearest console, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. The displays flickered as he worked, lines of alien code streaming across the screens. How long will this take? Zaylee asked, standing guard near the hatch. Not long, Eli replied, though the strain in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. Jamie moved to stand beside Zaylee. What's the plan if that thing gets through? Zaylee's gaze remained fixed on the hatch. If it breaches, I will engage it. Engage it? You mean fight it? Jamie asked, incredulous. My species is not without defensive capabilities, Zaylee said calmly. But it will be a last resort. Violence is not our way. Well, I hate to break it to you, Jamie said, but that thing doesn't look like it's here for a peaceful chat. As if on cue, the hatch buckled further, the metal groaning under the drone's relentless assault. Eli, anytime now? Jamie shouted. I'm working on it. Eli snapped, his hands a blur as he bypassed layers of encryption. Zaylee stepped forward, her glowing skin intensifying as she focused. Jamie, stay back. If the drone breaches, you must protect Eli at all costs. Jamie opened their mouth to argue but was cut off as the hatch burst open with a deafening crash. The drone surged into the room, its sleek, spider-like body gleaming under the blue light. Its red sensors locked onto the group, and it let out a high-pitched screech as it raised one of its sharp, metallic legs. Zaylee moved with lightning speed, placing herself between the drone and the others. Her hands glowed with a radiant energy, and a shimmering barrier formed in front of her just as the drone struck. The impact sent a shockwave through the room but the barrier held. Whoa, Jamie breathed, staring in awe. You didn't mention you could do that. There was no need until now, Zaylee said through gritted teeth, her focus unwavering. The drone reeled back, its sensors flickering as it recalibrated. It fired another laser, but the barrier absorbed the blast, sending ripples of energy cascading across its surface. Eli, hurry! Jamie shouted, stepping closer to Zaylee. I'm in. Eli yelled triumphantly. Just a few more seconds to shut everything down? The drone screeched again, lunging forward with renewed ferocity. Zaylee's barrier began to waver, cracks forming in the shimmering field. I cannot hold it much longer, Zaylee warned, her voice strained. Jamie looked around frantically, their eyes landing on a loose pipe jutting out from the wall. Without thinking, they grabbed it and charged at the drone. Jamie, no! Zaylee shouted. Jamie swung the pipe with all their strength, aiming for the drone's sensors. The makeshift weapon struck true, shattering one of the glowing red eyes. The drone recoiled, its movements erratic as sparks flew from its damaged sensor. Gotcha! Jamie shouted, adrenaline surging through their veins. The drone swiveled toward Jamie, its remaining sensors glowing brighter. Before it could attack, Zaylee stepped forward, her barrier collapsing as she redirected her energy into a concentrated blast. A beam of light shot from her hands, striking the drone square in its core. The machine let out a final anguished screech before collapsing into a smoking heap. Jamie stumbled back, panting. Remind me never to doubt you again. Zaylee lowered her hands, her glow fading as she turned to Jamie. Your bravery is commendable but reckless. Story of my life, Jamie said with a weak grin. Eli's voice broke through the tension. I've got it. System override complete. The room's lights brightened and a soothing voice echoed through the chamber. Security protocols deactivated. Emergency systems restored. All personnel please evacuate. Jamie let out a relieved laugh. We did it. We actually did it. Zaylee nodded, though her expression remained serious. This was only the first obstacle. Whoever orchestrated this attack will not stop here. Eli stood up, his face pale but determined. Then we'll stop them first. Jamie smirked. Now you're talking. Let's go find out who tried to kill us. The truth behind the attack. The hum of the control hub faded as they made their way down the narrow corridor, the air tense with the weight of what they had just overcome. The metallic scent of smoke lingered in the room behind them, where the drone had crumpled into a heap. Jamie couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled deep in their chest. The drone's attack hadn't been random, and neither had the elevator sabotage. Someone had orchestrated it, and that someone clearly knew what they were doing. Think we're in the clear? Eli asked, his voice low as he glanced nervously over his shoulder. For now, Zaylee replied, her sharp eyes scanning the dim hallway ahead of them. But whoever's behind this is not going to give up easily. This is only the beginning. Jamie nodded, their hands flexing at their sides, still keyed up from the adrenaline. We need to find out who's pulling the strings. We're running out of time. Eli stopped and turned toward the wall, examining a series of glowing control panels. We can't go back the way we came, it's too risky. But there's a central access point on this level that connects directly to the building's main data hub. If we can access it, we might be able to find out who's behind this attack. Jamie exchanged a look with Zaylee. Lead the way. The corridor twisted and turned in ways that seemed almost intentionally disorienting, the low, buzzing lights casting long shadows on the walls. Despite the calm in their voices, they were all aware of the looming danger. The drone's attack had been a calculated strike, and their unknown enemy had already proven they were willing to go to extremes. As they reached the central access point, Eli tapped on a console, his fingers moving rapidly across the interface. The screen flickered as it powered up, the soft hum of electronics filling the air. I'm in, Eli muttered, though his voice betrayed his nerves. Now let's see who's behind this. Zaylee remained silent, her posture still and alert as she scanned the room. Jamie stepped forward, glancing over Eli's shoulder at the screen. The data streamed across it, an intricate mesh of encrypted files, security logs, and access codes. Got something? Eli said, eyes widening as he tapped the screen. These logs go back a few days. Someone hacked into the building's systems, programmed the elevator to lock us in, and he paused, his face suddenly pale. And they've been monitoring us. Jamie frowned. Monitoring? What does that mean? Eli turned the screen toward them, pointing at a list of names and coded references. This is a list of surveillance records. They've been tracking everything we've done since we entered the building. Our movements, our interactions, even... He trailed off, his face darkening. Even our communications with Zaylee? Zaylee's eyes narrowed. Whoever is behind this is not just after you. They've been studying me. They knew about my presence before I did. Jamie stepped closer to the console. That doesn't make sense. How could they know about you? You're a diplomat, right? Not exactly someone who just pops up on a surveillance radar. Zaylee's gaze softened, but her voice remained cold. Not to them. The galaxy does not view my people as peaceful ambassadors. We are seen as a threat. Jamie hesitated, their mind racing. A threat to who? To the status quo, Zaylee replied. We have powerful abilities that many view as dangerous. If someone here saw an opportunity to manipulate or eliminate me, they would take it. Jamie's stomach tightened. So, someone's trying to kill you, and us just because you're here? Zaylee nodded. It is more complicated than that, but yes. Whoever is behind this attack sees me, and my people, as an existential threat. Eli leaned in closer to the screen, his brow furrowed. Wait, there's more. It looks like someone with access to high-level clearance was involved in all of this. The logs show that there was an unusual spike in access attempts to sensitive areas of the building. Jamie's heart skipped a beat. Who has clearance that high? Eli's fingers flew across the screen again. I'm trying to figure that out, but it's buried deep. Whoever it is, they've been using layers of encryption to keep their identity hidden. But there's one name that keeps popping up. He paused, glancing at them, then back at the screen. Director Sylvia Henson. Zaylee's expression darkened at the name. Henson. I know her. Jamie's eyebrows shot up. You know the person behind all this? Not directly, Zaylee said, her voice tight. But I have encountered her during diplomatic discussions. She holds significant influence in the corporate sector. She's worked with several factions that view my people as a destabilizing force. Eli's jaw dropped. Wait, she's a corporate director? You're telling me someone from the business world is behind this? Zaylee's eyes narrowed. Not just any business person. Henson is ruthless. If she's involved in this, it's more than just a personal vendetta. She wants to take down my people. Jamie took a step back, processing the information. So, she's using us to get to you? Yes, Zaylee said, her voice cold as ice. And now she's trying to cover her tracks by eliminating us. She must know that I'm aware of her involvement, and she's trying to silence us before we can expose her plans. Eli clenched his fists. That explains the drones, the sabotage, everything. She's trying to stop us before we can gather enough evidence. Then we need to move quickly, Jamie said, their voice steely. If we're going to stop her, we need to get to Henson before she covers her tracks. Agreed, Zaylee said, turning toward the door. We cannot afford to waste time. The trio quickly made their way to the nearest elevator shaft, determined to reach Henson before she could enact any further plans. But as they moved through the building, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The walls seemed to close in on them, the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the intercom system, cutting through the tension. Attention all personnel. Director Sylvia Henson is currently unavailable. All access to high-level areas is restricted. Any attempt to breach secure zones will result in immediate termination. Jamie exchanged a look with Zaylee. It's a trap. We need to move now. Zaylee nodded. This is no longer just about survival. This is about exposing the truth. The building's corridors grew more labyrinthine the deeper they went, twisting through maintenance areas, access tunnels, and secure zones that few had ever ventured into. The oppressive atmosphere of the building had shifted. What had once been a place of business now felt like a war zone. The hum of the intercom systems, the flicker of lights, and the distant sounds of mechanical movements made it feel as though the building itself was alive, watching them, waiting. Do you think they know we're coming? Eli whispered, his voice strained with worry as he kept pace with Jamie and Zaylee. They know, Zaylee replied with chilling certainty. Henson has eyes everywhere. Jamie glanced over at her. Then we can't waste time trying to sneak past security. We have to move fast. Eli nodded, though the flicker of doubt in his eyes was hard to miss. How do we get to her? The building's security is tight, and we can't exactly barge into her office. Zaylee's face softened as she glanced down at the two of them. We don't need to barge. We need to outthink her. The central data hub can tell us more about her next move. If we can access her private files, we might uncover what she's planning. Jamie hesitated. But what if she's already moved everything? If she's this powerful, she must have contingency plans in place. She might have contingency plans, Zaylee agreed, but she doesn't know that we're onto her. We have the element of surprise for now. That's what we need to use. Eli checked his tablet again. Okay, the data hub's just ahead. It's behind a security door, but I can override the system and get us in. Jamie took a deep breath. Let's do it. The more time we waste, the more time she has to cover her tracks. They approached the large, reinforced steel door at the end of the hallway, a holographic security lock glowing a soft blue. Eli hurried forward, typing rapidly on the tablet screen. The lock hummed to life, and after a tense moment, the door slid open with a mechanical hiss. Inside was a dimly lit room filled with rows of data terminals and storage banks, the air thick with the scent of old electronics. The faint hum of machinery echoed through the room, and a large central server loomed in the middle, protected by a cage of glowing energy barriers. "Okay, we've got 5 minutes before the system resets," Eli muttered, moving to one of the terminals. He began typing furiously, his eyes flickering between the screen and the energy barriers. "Keep an eye out," Jamie warned, taking up a defensive position near the entrance. "We don't know how much time we have before Henson sends reinforcements." Zaylee stood by Jamie, her senses sharp. "You're right. We have little time." Suddenly, the distant sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Eli's fingers froze mid-type. "Damn. They're here already." Jamie's heart raced. "How many?" "Too many," Eli said, voice tight. "We need to hurry." Zaylee moved toward the energy barrier, studying it carefully. "I can bypass the barrier's energy field, but it will require a precise focus." Eli glanced over his shoulder. "How long?" 30 seconds, Zaylee replied. "Cover me." Jamie nodded, stepping forward. "We need to buy her time." As Zaylee stepped closer to the energy field, her hands glowing faintly, Jamie and Eli kept their eyes on the hallway, their senses alert for any sign of movement. The sound of boots on metal grew louder. "We're not alone," Jamie muttered, lowering their stance. "They're coming from both sides." The first group of security personnel appeared at the far end of the corridor. They were heavily armed, their uniforms sleek and dark, and their eyes scanned the area with precision. "Can you make it?" Jamie asked, their voice tight with urgency. Zaylee's brow furrowed as her hands moved in intricate patterns before the energy barrier. The air crackled with energy as she focused all her will on the task. "Almost." The security team drew closer, but Jamie held their ground, their heart pounding. They grabbed a loose metal rod from the floor and prepared to fight if it came to that. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Done?" Eli yelled, pulling Jamie's attention back to the terminal. Zaylee released a breath as the energy barrier flickered and then deactivated entirely. She stepped forward, eyes already scanning the central server. Eli rushed to the terminal, plugging a data chip into the system. The screens flickered as information began to pour in. The file directories on Henson's private activities, research, reports, financial transactions, came into view, each one more damning than the last. "Henson's been working with mercenaries," Eli muttered, his fingers moving across the screen. "She's been funding covert operations targeting Zaylee's people. Mining, sabotage, even assassinations." Jamie felt a surge of anger. "She's been playing both sides this whole time." Zaylee's voice was cold. "It is worse than that. These files show that she is planning something much larger. A campaign to eliminate my people once and for all." "Why now?" Jamie asked, their voice incredulous. "What's changed?" Eli's face grew pale as he scanned the files. "Here," he said, his voice faltering. "She's planning to expose Zaylee's presence as a threat to galactic peace, blame everything on her. But if she can manipulate enough powerful people into backing her cause, she could start a war." Zaylee's face remained unreadable. "She must believe that my people will retaliate, but she underestimates us." Jamie clenched their fists. "We can't let her get away with this. We have to stop her, before it's too late." Suddenly, the door to the data room slammed open, and the sound of boots pounding the floor echoed as Henson's security team flooded in. "Eli, upload the data and let's go," Jamie shouted. Eli's hands flew across the terminal, but the data transfer was slow, and the guards were almost upon them. Zaylee stood tall, her glowing hands raised as she prepared for the inevitable fight. "I will protect you," she said softly, her voice unwavering. Jamie nodded. "We'll make it. We're not losing this fight." But as the door to the room shut behind them with a resounding clang, it was clear that the final showdown was only just beginning. The final confrontation. The sound of boots echoed off the walls as Henson's elite security team flooded the data room, weapons drawn, eyes narrowed. Jamie's heart raced, but they stayed focused. Zaylee stood tall in the center of the room, her energy crackling around her hands as she prepared for whatever came next. Her calm in the face of danger was unnerving, but Jamie could feel the tension coiling tighter with each passing second. "We don't have much time," Eli said, his voice shaking slightly as he watched the guards move closer. "The data's almost transferred, but it's not there yet." Jamie stepped forward, blocking the path to the terminal. "We're not letting anyone stop us." The leader of the security team, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his cheek, raised his weapon aiming it at Zaylee. "Step aside," he ordered, his voice cold. "This doesn't have to get messy. You're outnumbered and we can't allow this breach." Zaylee's eyes flashed, her body tense. "Messy is exactly what you've made it." She stepped forward, her energy flaring like a living thing, illuminating the room with a faint, eerie glow. Jamie felt a surge of pride mixed with fear. Zaylee was powerful, but this many-armed soldiers, even she couldn't take them all down without help. "You want us to stop?" Jamie said, their voice sharp, steady. "You're the ones who've been trying to kill us from the start. You think we're just going to roll over and let you walk away?" The security leader didn't flinch. "This isn't about you. It's about her," he said, his gaze locking onto Zaylee. "She's the threat here and you're just pawns in her game. We're doing this for the greater good." Jamie's eyes narrowed. The greater good? They took a step toward the leader, their hand instinctively reaching for the makeshift weapon they'd picked up earlier. "Don't you dare talk about the greater good. You're part of a system that uses people as tools to further its own agenda. You're all just puppets." The leader's gaze flickered just for a moment before he raised his weapon. "I'll give you one chance to stand down. Don't make me." Before he could finish, Zaylee's energy exploded forward, her hand sending a pulse of force that threw the guards off their feet. The air crackled as the energy surged through the room, the guards' weapons clattering to the floor as they struggled to regain their footing. "Stay back," Zaylee warned, her voice low and commanding. "I will not hesitate to defend myself." The guards hesitated for a moment, looking at one another, but then the leader barked an order. "Attack. Now." With a roar, they lunged forward, weapons raised. But before they could take a step, Zaylee's energy swirled around her, a barrier of crackling light forming in front of her. The first few guards slammed into it, unable to break through the shimmering field. The force sent them skidding backward, their bodies hitting the walls with sickening thuds. Jamie and Eli exchanged a glance. "We need to get out of here," Jamie said, already backing toward the door. "I'm almost done," Eli shouted, his fingers flying over the screen as the data transfer continued. The guards were regrouping and the tension in the air grew unbearable. Zaylee, still standing firm, focused on holding them off, her energy field pulsing with intensity. "Zaylee, move!" Jamie yelled, their voice urgent. But Zaylee didn't budge. "I will not leave until we have what we need." A few of the guards managed to regroup, charging forward again with renewed fury. Zaylee extended her hands toward them, sending another wave of force that sent the attackers sprawling. But the leader wasn't finished yet. "You're making a mistake," he sneered. "You can't stop what's already been set in motion. Even if you escape here, we'll hunt you down. You'll never expose Sylvia Henson." Zaylee's eyes narrowed. "You think you can silence me? My people will never let you succeed." Jamie stepped forward, grabbing Eli's arm. "Eli, the transfer's almost done, right?" Eli nodded, his face pale but determined. "Almost there. We need to take her down. Get the data, then we make a run for it," Jamie said, voice tight with tension. "Zaylee, we've got what we need. Let's go." Zaylee hesitated, then nodded, her eyes flicking to Jamie and Eli. "Fine. But we're not leaving empty-handed." The last of the guards were regaining their composure, trying to close the gap. With a flick of her wrist, Zaylee created a blast of energy that sent them flying backward, clearing the way to the door. "Now," she said, her voice firm. "Go." Jamie bolted for the door, followed closely by Eli. Zaylee lingered for a moment, casting one final glance over her shoulder at the fallen security team before she followed. The hallway outside was eerily quiet, the flickering lights casting long shadows on the walls. They made their way toward the elevator shaft, heartbeats pounding in their ears. "Are we clear?" Eli panted, looking over his shoulder. "Not yet," Jamie said, glancing around. They could still hear the faint sound of footsteps echoing behind them. "They're coming." Zaylee's face was grim. "We can't outrun them forever. We need to get to the control center and lock them out of the system." Eli nodded. "There's one more access point a few floors down. If we can reach it, we can shut down the entire building's security grid." "Let's move," Jamie urged. The trio sprinted down the hall, making sharp turns through the maze of corridors, their breaths ragged. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of pursuit growing closer. As they rounded another corner, the elevator shaft came into view. Zaylee wasted no time, pulling open a maintenance panel next to the elevator doors and plugging into the console. "This should give us some time," she muttered, her fingers dancing across the interface. The building's security grid flickered as the controls powered down, the lights dimming momentarily. "We're not done yet," Jamie said, stepping toward the elevator doors. Once we're out of here we go public. We expose Henson for what she is. Not just Henson, Zaylee replied, eyes hard with determination. This conspiracy goes far deeper than her. We need to dismantle the entire system that allows people like her to thrive. The elevator doors slid open and without another word they piled inside. The moment they were in, Zaylee pressed the emergency override, and the doors closed with a soft hiss. As the elevator descended, Jamie felt the weight of the moment settle over them. They had done it. They had escaped. But the war was far from over. In the distance, the building's alarms began to blare, but it didn't matter now. The truth was out. And they would stop at nothing to make sure Sylvia Henson paid for her crimes. This concludes the story. Would you like any revisions or additional content? The Price of Truth. The elevator's descent felt slower than it should have, each floor passing with a heavy silence that pressed against Jamie's chest. As the building's alarms began to wail in the distance, there was a momentary flicker of dread, a question that loomed over them. Had they done enough? Jamie turned to look at Zaylee, her face still calm but with an edge of focus that betrayed the emotional storm brewing beneath the surface. Her alien beauty, once a source of wonder, now felt like a symbol of something far deeper. A being of power, of resilience, standing tall in the face of everything that had sought to destroy her and her people. We're almost there, Zaylee said softly, her voice steady. Eli, who had been glued to his tablet, looked up. I'm patching into the outer systems now. We should be able to get through the security perimeter without much trouble. They're going to be scrambling to lock us out, but we'll have a good head start. Jamie nodded, but the thoughts swirling in their mind were far from comforting. Henson's plan had been massive, involving an intricate web of corporate manipulation, covert mercenary operations, and political maneuvering that spanned galaxies. It was the kind of thing that could bring entire governments to their knees. Yet they'd taken the first step in uncovering it. They had the data, the proof, and they weren't backing down. As the elevator reached the sublevels, where the emergency exit routes were located, Jamie's grip tightened around their weapon. They didn't know who was waiting for them on the outside, or how long they had before the entire building would descend into chaos. But one thing was certain, the stakes had just gone up. We can't afford to waste time, Jamie said, stepping out of the elevator as the doors opened with a soft chime. The area was eerily quiet, illuminated by harsh, fluorescent lights. The emergency exit was just ahead, a nondescript door that would take them to the streets below. Wait, Eli said, his fingers still moving frantically over the tablet. I've located an encrypted backup server, somewhere on the 17th floor. If we can get to it, we can secure a secondary copy of all the data. Zaylee raised an eyebrow. How long do we have? Not long. The security measures are tightening up. Eli paused, chewing on his lip nervously. But this could be our failsafe. If we take it, they won't be able to erase everything. It's a long shot, but if we pull this off, Henson's network will come crumbling down. Everything will be exposed. Jamie exchanged a quick glance with Zaylee. The thought of fighting through more security, risking everything to access a server they didn't know the layout of, felt almost insane. But then they remembered what was at stake. They had to finish what they started. Let's do it, Jamie said. We're not leaving this building empty-handed. Zaylee nodded resolutely. Agreed. We end this now. They retraced their steps through the maintenance corridors, heading back toward the heart of the building. The emergency lights had flickered out completely, and the corridors felt colder, quieter. The hairs on Jamie's neck stood up, and they could hear the faint sound of movement, guards possibly. The closer they got to the main levels, the more difficult it would be to avoid detection. They reached the stairwell at the far end of the hall. Eli opened a secure panel and began bypassing the door's lock with deft movements. They couldn't afford to waste a second. Got it? Eli exclaimed, opening the door just enough for them to slip through. We're on the 17th floor now. Stay sharp. Zaylee led the way, her posture poised, ready for action. Her every step was measured, purposeful, a reflection of someone who had spent years, no centuries, learning to survive in a hostile world. The 17th floor was a stark contrast to the lower levels. It was sleek, modern, with expensive-looking glass partitions and cutting-edge technology. There was an air of secrecy to it, as if everything here was hidden in plain sight, too well protected to ever be questioned. Everything's going to be locked down now, Eli muttered, his voice strained with urgency. We've got to get to the server room fast. As they moved down the corridor, the whir of security drones began to fill the air. There was no turning back now. They had to make it. The server room door was ahead, a heavy, reinforced entryway guarded by a biometric scanner. Eli rushed forward and began hacking into the system, sweat beading on his forehead. Zaylee positioned herself near the door, her senses heightened, scanning for any threats. Jamie stayed close, watching as the seconds ticked away. "I'm in," Eli said, his voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. The door slid open, revealing rows of gleaming servers stacked in pristine rows, cables snaking in every direction. "Now we get the backup data." They rushed inside, and Eli immediately connected the tablet to one of the data ports. The transfer began almost immediately, but a warning popped up on the screen. "Henson's already trying to lock us out," Eli said, tapping frantically at the screen. "She's pushing everything into lockdown. If we don't hurry, this will be the last chance to get the data." Zaylee moved to cover the door, her energy radiating outward, pushing back against the feeling of being cornered. She wasn't about to let them fail. Just as the data transfer neared completion, the door slammed open. Guards poured into the room, weapons drawn, and for a split second, everything seemed to slow down. Jamie's heart pounded in their chest as they moved into action. "Zaylee now?" In an instant, Zaylee's energy flared, a wave of pure force erupting from her body, sending the first few guards flying backward into the walls. The remaining attackers hesitated, stunned by the display of power. Jamie rushed to Eli's side. "Is it done?" Eli gave a quick nod. "Got it?" He grabbed the tablet, clutching it to his chest. "We've got everything. Let's go." They turned and bolted toward the exit, Zaylee once again clearing their path with a combination of force fields and pulses of energy that knocked the guards back, buying them the precious seconds they needed. As they reached the elevator shaft, Jamie could hear the sound of more reinforcements approaching. The building was descending into chaos, but they were almost there. Zaylee stepped in front of the elevator doors, energy swirling around her hands. She knew this was only the beginning. The battle for freedom wasn't over, but they had taken the first step. The data was in their hands. Sylvia Henson's network was crumbling. The truth was finally exposed. With one final glance, Zaylee stepped into the elevator, followed by Jamie and Eli. The doors closed, and as the lift began its ascent, they all knew this fight would continue, but at least now they had a fighting chance. As the elevator ascended into the unknown, a new sense of resolve filled their hearts. The journey was far from over, but they were no longer powerless. Together they would ensure that justice was served. And with that, the doors opened and they were free. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.